around me staring at me. And then a couple of them took the example that I gave.
Hey, welcome back to GreenLantern2038. Gonna play our do our other episode of this now, where we were.
Stay down. Keep your head down. The crew increases engine power, but it's too late. Larry, we're going down, Larry. I know it. The plane hits a bridge over the Potomac River. You know, like almost like we rotated at 90 degrees, like we were going to somersault or something like that. And then we hit the water, and that was a real impact, much greater than the one with the bridge. And I felt myself blacking out. I thought I was going to die in that airplane that day.
You sure you don't want to just grab the bus? No, we don't. If we're gonna go out, we're doing it right. Well? What the hell am I getting into here?
So I got my leg loose, then I did the same thing to Nikki's right leg. I got her out of she had a summer problem. And I just pulled her by the hand and started heading aft and went over the seats behind me. Of the 79 people on board, 6 escaped from the shattered wreckage and reached the surface. I knew I was out of the aircraft when it ceased to be totally black.
Rachel wants me to pull up a chair.
Left a trail of destruction on Washington's 14th Street Bridge. 4 people were killed in the cars. 4 more were seriously injured as the 737 slid from the bridge into the river below. The fate of the passengers and crew is still unknown. The disaster soon reaches news cameraman Chester Panzer.
The assignment desk called on the radio and said, we heard something about a small plane crash at National Airport.
Is that what people do? Nice Rachel.
Rachel started speeding down the highway.
Nice weather.
By the time Panzer arrives at the crash site, rescue teams are already at work, including a helicopter from the U.S. Park Police.
Grabbed our gear out of the trunk.
I don't hang out with anyone.
The helicopter faintly in the distance. Connected our cable to the camera to the recording deck.
It was Max.
See a flashing light. And I started rolling.
That sucks.
And the first thing I saw was someone being loaded into an ambulance.
It's Bert Hamilton, the purchasing manager from Maryland.
I want to say
He's the first passenger rescued from the Potomac River.
Thanks for last night.
Most of the survivors are still battling the icy waters. Flight attendant Kelly Duncan reaches for the rescue line. Beside her, wearing a life vest, is Secretary Nikki Filch.
Why you came along? Are you suggesting I should leave
Priscilla Toronto has lost her baby and can see no sign of her husband. She clings to businessman and private pilot Joe Stein. Once I surfaced there, I looked around, and that airplane was gone, except for this little piece of it that I was holding on to. Barely visible to the camera is one last survivor, Arlen Williams. He's badly tangled in the wreckage and urges the others to take the lifeline first. There was a fellow who was strapped into his seat right in front of us who couldn't get out because a bunch of cables and things like that had gotten around him, and he was just wired in place there. And then I turned to Nikki and I said, I'm all broken up and I know I can't swim. My legs aren't working.
There was a big gaping hole in the ice.
I'm listening.
The big cracks. And it looked like someone was taking a baseball and throwing it through a window.
I think We should play Two Truths and a Lie. It's a game where each person offers up 3 facts about themselves, 2 of which are the truth, and 1 of which is a lie. Right. And then the other person has to guess which is which.
The river is near freezing and filled with thick ice. It's too dangerous for rescuers to enter the water. Panzer keeps rolling as the helicopter lifts a second person from the river. It's flight attendant Kelly Duncan.
She was holding on, and the helicopter was just flying her in.
I was born in York, in fashion and drama, to which I will one day return when my heinous exile in the feudal days comes to an end.
Joe Stanley does his best to help
I've
2
never
other
been.
passengers, Nikki Felch and Priscilla
Not a
Tirano.
real travel? Not yet, at least.
I had Priscilla in a kind of an arm lock on the side, and I had Nikki
Russia, Greece,
on this side, but this arm wasn't working very well. And the helicopter began to pull us away into the water.
One day,
I lost Nikki almost instantly because this whole arm just was dysfunctional. And I had Priscilla under that arm for about halfway across the river. We started running into the broken ice. I was coming up into those ice packs, one pack after another, and all my ribs ended up getting broken. At some point during that, I lost my grip on Priscilla and left her laying there on the top of a block of ice.
Joe is pulled to safety, but Priscilla Tirano is now stranded and alone. The helicopter drops Priscilla a life ring.
I watched her be towed off.
You see more
I saw her lose her grip on the lifeline.
Long Beach,
That's when it hit me that this woman was going to drown in front of me. She was in the open water, and she's being pushed under the water by a helicopter wash.
Then, one bystander decides to take action.
He didn't think about how cold the water was, didn't think what it would do to him.
It's a federal government employee named Lenny Skutnik.
He really was a hero, in that he had enough guts to do it and just didn't think about the consequences.
Lenny reacted. Nobody else did. They were probably all standing around. I wanted to react, but I couldn't.
Skutnik's bravery saves Priscilla's life, but her husband and baby are among the dead.
Paramedic reaches out, grabs Nikki Felch, and just grips her over her, hoists her up onto the skid the best he can. And he's not even secured into the helicopter. He's basically balancing himself, so it's pretty amazing.
I used to want to be a pirate. I kind of still do.
It's now been 45 minutes since Flight 90 plunged into the icy river. Too long for anyone to survive in the freezing water.
Nikki Felch was the last one to be pulled out of the water.
Only 5 people make it out alive.
I once broke my hand and stepped into the wall right? No way.
Within hours,
Bitch took my
NTSB investigators are on the job. As they begin their work, much of Washington is paralyzed by the fierce winter storm. They immediately wonder if the bad weather could cause a devastating accident.
Of course, the weather was a consideration because people were getting laid off from work early in D.C. I was one of them. That day, I went across that same bridge about an hour before. I made a comment in my carpool that said, "Was that an airplane that was flying in this weather?" Was my comment at the time.
Flight 90 has crashed less than a mile from the runway. The location tells investigators the plane didn't gain much altitude, but little else.
All we knew was that it seemed to have hit in a flat attitude, which would indicate some problem of control. But we didn't know what exactly caused it.
At the airport, they gather as much information as they can.
It's quite a day. It's snowing pretty hard at times.
I'm secretly believing cars that is all go on this cover band.
About an hour and a quarter while they cleared the snow off the runway.
The first thing you look at is the weather. Environmental conditions are always one of the prime considerations when looking at initial causes of any accident.
Investigators learned that Flight 90 was delayed for more than an hour while the airport was closed.
Anyway, I think I have your number.
6 degrees in Tampa and we're
Of
stuck in a
course you want to
snowstorm.
be a pirate.
Definitely be good to
Sailing
get
the
home.
seas,
If ice and snow built up on Flight 90's wings during the delay, it could have prevented the plane from climbing. Ice and snow can interrupt the flow of air over the plane's wings, decreasing
my
lift.
first mate. Oh, are
The
you accepting
importance of
applications?
de-icing the aircraft is very paramount. Even a small amount of contamination can affect the performance of a wing, whether it's a light aircraft or a heavy aircraft.
A bitch takes your Hulu, she's gotta get done. Damn straight. But you didn't get that scar
They
from
examined
Chris's
de-icing records from the day of the crash.
That scar
They
is
were
from
very,
distal
very
wing
interested
strike.
in how efficient that de-icing had been.
How could you
And
possibly know
Florida's
that?
procedures called for a powerful de-icing solution, one designed for very cold days.
The point is,
Basically what
I
happens
know
is
the
that
scar
the
you got
icing
comes
fluid
from your wrist and
dissolves the snow
Like,
and ice
from skateboarding?
into a mixture.
Yeah.
So when it's first put on at sort of full strength,
6 years ago?
it's doing quite a good job.
Records reveal that the de-icing fluid sprayed on Flight 90 was not full strength.
They honed in on the issue of the equipment itself, the mixture that was used, the procedures that were followed.
De-icing fluid has to be adjusted according to the outside temperature.
It's just de-icing fluid.
If the mixture wasn't strong enough, it might have allowed ice to reform on the wings.
On the contrary, you absolutely.
Want to pass me that weather data, please?
Investigators studied temperatures recorded at the airport during the long shutdown.
Pity too.
They find that the fluid used should have worked.
Thanks.
Though it wasn't full strength, the mixture was strong enough for the temperatures recorded in the day of the crash.
Maybe I just needed to test you.
Shouldn't have caused the
Or
crash.
maybe
Other aircraft did depart,
you are crazy.
which means that things were successful in other
You've been
in
conditioned.
other jetways. What was wrong with this particular aircraft that caused the crash?
I'm impressed.
The Mile High Club
I bet
isn't
it's
just
hard
about
to
having sex on a...
I'm gonna feel good about that one. When your dad is the district attorney, I guess lying is something you're used to. Seriously? Seriously. I know who to call if I need to get out of a ticket then. Not that I have a right of my own. Car first, embarrassing number of moving violations second.
Really
Hey,
difficult.
thanks for trusting
The
me.
tail came up, other pieces came up,
Trusting you?
but it's an
You played the
exhausting
game.
process.
And not everyone
Engines
is
are
a
knocked
pilot.
loose from the aircraft, and parts are
Eyepatches
here
are
and there
so
scattered.
cool.
So it's
And
it's
raw,
quite difficult to put everything together.
I guess.
A week after the crash, investigators get a break.
It's not a big deal.
Flight 90's
I
black
hate to
box
break
flight
it to you,
recorders have been recovered from the bottom of
Chloe
the river,
Price is not exactly renowned for
and they appear to be
fast
undamaged.
train trust and everything.
In 1982, the Flight Data Recorder, or
not
FDR,
really
captures
into
only a handful of
shit.
parameters about the performance of the plane.
I feel like I can trust you.
But it's enough
Yeah?
to give
I got on
NTSB
this train
investigator
with you.
John McAdoo a vital
Fair
clue.
point.
Let me know when that's ready. It told us the altitude and the time, and so you knew how long it rolled down the runway before it lifted off.
Mine listen to some music.
Flight 90 takes 45 seconds to get airborne, 15 seconds longer than usual.
Hey,
Takeoff was very slow.
That don't seem right, does it?
It took a long time to accelerate.
It's gotta be something about their engine power.
The plane eventually had enough power to reach liftoff speed.
V1?
But they did not have enough power to climb.
It didn't climb in a normal way. So obviously, there was something wrong with the amount of the power.
It's an intriguing clue, but the FDR doesn't have enough information to reveal what the problem was.
The reporter doesn't tell you anything about the engines, or what their RPM is, or what they're doing.
McAdoo hopes the cockpit voice recorder will provide some answers. wintry conditions as they taxi in line behind a DC-9.
It's been a while since we were de-iced. Tell you what.
Cool bracelet. I've had it.
My windshield will be de-iced. Don't know about my way.
McAdill listens as Wheaton and Pettit discuss removing ice from their plane's wings.
Maybe
All we
we
really
need
need is the inside of the wings anyway.
They know that returning to the gate to be de-iced again would mean another long delay.
If you have to leave the line, you're going to come back and have to rejoin a big line of aircraft waiting departure. So that's one of the issues that weighs on the captain's decision as to whether to depart the lineup or not.
I'm just
Get your wing down.
let me know if you need
It
to talk.
seems the captain comes up with an unconventional strategy to de-ice without losing his place in line.
Jump and find out.
He maneuvers his plane into the exhaust streaming from the DC-9 in front of him.
They pulled up in back of another aircraft, the DC-9, thinking that they might be able to warm up and blow off their aircraft.
The DC-9's engines expel a 60-mile-an-hour blast of 300-degree heat.
Did they get yours? Can you see your wingtip? I got a little bit on mine. A little? This thing's got about a quarter to a half an inch on it. All the way.
It's a disturbing conversation, one that suggests these pilots were experimenting with an unofficial procedure. But so far, McAdill has heard nothing that explains a loss of engine power.
Your throttles? Okay.
Then he hears something chilling.
Oh. God, look at that thing.
While the plane is speeding down the runway, the first officer tells the captain that he suspects there's a problem.
That don't seem right.
Does it? It says there's a...
But the captain convinces him nothing is wrong.
Huh? Maybe it is right.
I think he felt that they weren't accelerating very quickly. You could feel acceleration in your back, you know, when you're an experienced pilot, you know, you've done this 1,000 times. You know, if you're not moving as quickly as, you know, it's really a feel thing. Something's not right. He should have trusted his instincts. Yeah, let me hear that again.
Investigators wonder if the pilots made any other mistakes.
Call 90, taxi to position, and be ready for an immediate takeoff. I think we might get to go here in a minute. A lot of good work.
The amount of power or thrust needed for takeoff is different for every flight. It has to be adjusted for the weight of the plane, the length of the runway, and the weather conditions.
It's actually a pretty nice view. Glad you approve. And as you were
Investigators hear the first officer set a target or bug to remind him what that amount is.
I like games. Use it. This is what I learned here at It's all about improvisation.
Perhaps the first officer set his target too low for the plane's takeoff weight. If he did, it could explain why the plane gained speed so slowly.
So far, what I've learned about
And why it
you
didn't
is
have
that
enough
you're
power to climb.
active, lying, and playing games. What's your point? That you're either full of imagination or
The engines could have been running, but not with enough power or thrust
let me
to
know when you
maintain
figure
the
out what's
airspeed
wrong.
required to get the lift that you
This
needed to stay off the
game
ground.
involves
The weight
spying
of the
on
plane
people
was
from
recorded
afar.
before the flight.
Luckily, we've got some
Investigators use
high-tech
this to
surveillance
calculate how
equipment
much
right here.
power Flight 90
Let's
needed
fire
to
it
get
up.
safely off the ground.
Everything checks out. They weren't overweight. Come on, I've got an idea.
With little data from the FDR, McAdill comes up with an unusual way to analyze the power coming from Flight 90's engines.
Shit.
I don't recall it ever being used in any other accident or available for any other accident.
That was my last one.
He hopes to figure out how much power the engines were providing
Borderless.
by analyzing the sound they made.
Hey, maybe I can MacGyver something up. I've been
Life
told
gets
I'm pretty
down.
handy. Oh, yeah? Let's see what you got.
Okay.
Rachel really wants to use this viewfinder. I'd love to get it working for her.
Turbines that make different sounds depending on how quickly they're spinning.
Looks like I might be able to
When
pry
the
it
engine
open with
needs
the
more
right tool.
power, the turbine spins faster, and the frequency of the sound changes.
I'm thinking about prying open that viewfinder. You got a knife on you?
The sound
A
of Flight
knife?
90's
Yeah.
engine should tell
My
McAdoo
mom's
how
one.
much
Mom took
power
mine.
they're generating. And thanks to
No.
the unique design of the
How about
737 with its
Nail
engines
file?
mounted close to the cockpit, he already has a recording of the sound he needs.
I guess you could stab someone with a nail
It's
file.
unique in that the sound of the engines is
Right.
recorded.
Sure, let's try it.
Sure, let's try it.
Okay.
They play back the cockpit voice recorder in a soundproof room.
120.
B1?
In this case, those engines immediately under the wings and slightly forward of the wings allowed them to get good, if I could use the word, voice prints on the sounds that were coming from the engines.
We did a digital sound analysis of the cockpit voice recorder, which can eliminate all other noises except for that frequency of the engines on the cockpit voice recorder.
Can you take the stick shaker out?
Feeling a dedication plate takes persistence.
Listen to the voices.
The technician eliminates the other sounds in the cockpit one by one, until all that's left is the sound of the engines.
It's a pretty scientific and detailed issue to look at passive frequencies and outside noise and compare it to a normal takeoff. But all this was done by the flight recorder specialists and technicians.
Can you turn that up a bit?
The results are dramatic.
Those engines showing at full power.
The sound analysis indicated that the engines were running at a speed that would
That
produce
wasn't
about
enough of a game
70%
Your
power.
MacGyver skills are second to
What this
none.
means basically is that the aircraft was taking off with about 1.5 engines.
Investigators now know that the Boeing 737's engines weren't running at full power during takeoff. What they don't know is why.
It just smells like jasmine. Did you smell midnight moon too? Really should have showered this morning.
A key piece of wreckage may hold the answer.
Here's the game.
It's the engine pressure
You find
ratio
something for us
gauge,
to
or
file,
EPR,
and then
which
you
is
and I will
connected to a
act out
sensor
what
at
we're
the front of the
saying.
engine. It measures the
That's it.
increasing pressure of
I do
air
that in my
passing
head
through the
during
engine
like
to calculate
every
thrust.
class. See? You're a natural. Let's give it a try.
The gauge tells pilots when they have enough power to climb. If it was
Hey,
malfunctioning,
what do you say
it
we
might have given
barbecue
the crew
some
a
squirrels
faulty
when we're done
reading.
here? God, you
It's a
just have the
real-time
best idea.
physical indicator of thrust.
The first officer had doubts about
Love
the
it, this
EPR
guy.
gauge.
What's he thinking right now?
That don't seem right. Doesn't it?
But the captain made the
How
mistake
come
of
you don't
focusing
stick my
only on
truck
his
for
speed.
begonia? I've been pollinated twice this week already.
Maybe it is right.
A close examination of the EPR gauge reveals something strange.
What's going on with these teams?
The needle of the gauge is frozen in its final position, and it's displaying any possible reading.
Thou shalt make
The
a
engines
good
were
offering
producing
of
more
your
power than the engines were
firstborn
capable
son.
of producing.
Who are you talking
That
to,
was a huge
Dad?
red flag.
No one, son. Now,
It now
use the
seems
drill.
likely that the
See if
gauge
the
was
fire
showing the
starts.
wrong reading throughout the short flight.
Okay.
The question
Wow.
is why?
That was dark.
Pilots were seeing more power than they were getting. So what would have caused that?
Here, at 2.9.
Investigators begin to suspect that the weather may have played a role in the
Sweet
accident
Beanie.
after
What do
all.
you suppose she's thinking?
They focus on the EPR sensor at the front of the engine.
Nature's Wi-Fi sucks.
If the tiny
Maybe
sensor
this
was
is the
blocked
royal
with
family
ice and
around
snow,
here with
it might have
Bravo.
sent incorrect data
Only
to the
I could
cockpit.
guess their password.
I think we're gonna
We
need another
love
plane.
69. Dingoes or their babies 13.
McAdoo has no hard evidence that the sensor was blocked, but he decides to follow a hunch.
I got a hold of another 737 because I already suspected that engine pressure ratio gauges.
Who's next?
He uses a piece of tape to simulate the effect of ice blocking the engine sensor. He recreates the actions of the pilots on the day of the flight.
Okay, start her up.
And he records the sound of the engines from inside the cockpit.
Keep throttling up.
He increases power until the engine gauges match the target set by the crew of Flight 90.
Got it.
Blocking the sensors on the test flight should create the same reduction in engine performance as on Flight 90. Both engines should sound identical.
Okay, let's see what we've got.
McAdill compares the sound of his test flight to the engine noise captured during Flight 90's takeoff.
That's a perfect match. I concluded that both engines were blocked with something, probably ice, but they were blocked. The pilots were reading what was required for engines.
Sorry.
That's not what they were getting.
Investigators are convinced the crew failed to give the engines more power because the iced-over sensor led them to believe they already had enough. By the time they realize their mistake, there is no way to stop the crash.
They did apply full power, but that was only about 5 seconds before impact. It was too late.
The 747 has an engine anti-icing system that uses heat to keep the sensor clear of ice.
Hey, are you alright?
EPR all the way to 204.
Excuse me? Last I checked, you're supposed to be silver price. Yet we've been ditching now for hours, and we haven't even gotten wasted yet. It's got to be against some
Unbelievable. One of the worst snowstorms, and they have their anti-ice turned off.
The investigators found that to be astounding.
Hell yeah.
That they had
The honor student
replied
wants
to
to show their
anti-ice,
school
engine
delinquent
anti-ice,
party.
with a rote answer of
Be my
off,
guest.
and that both
How
people
gracious of
accepted that. EPR all the way to
It seems the two Florida-based pilots were following their usual warm weather routine.
off. They were in the Florida mindset. They weren't in the cold weather scenario mindset at that moment when that call out and reply were made in the cockpit.
But McAdill still has a question. A 737 is designed to take off with just one working engine. Even with the reduced
You shouldn't bring
power,
alcohol so
Flight
people
90 should
can
have
not
been able
really
to
share
go.
it with anybody, right? And
There's still a problem
fuck
because
it,
the
I just want to
aircraft
take
is
something
designed to
that's
take
not
off with one engine after it reaches a certain speed,
I'm going to
which it did.
try to keep up.
So there had to be something besides the engine power.
Can we
Investigators
help
study the
you?
pilot's records. They learn Captain Wheaton has a history of mistakes.
Oh my god!
What have we here? Captain Wheaton. Look at all the
Holy
unsatisfactories.
shit.
He's been reported more than once for failing to follow procedures, especially during takeoffs and
And
landings.
the Oscar for Best Distraction of wine for stickers.
Checklist you said
Rachel in there.
unsatisfactory flight procedures unsatisfactory.
The captain's history of poor decision-making helps explain his unusual maneuver.
Gotta get your wing now.
Oh, hello. Hi.
Nearby plane.
Good.
Blow snow. The results are disastrous.
I need to get you to focus on
was
Rachel
Rachel.
so I can
get some
find Martin.
warm air on the
Go.
leading edge of the wing, and any snow that was clinging to it ran back
I've
as
seen
water
this kind
and
of thing before.
refroze
This
as
woman
ice.
clearly has a wound that needs to be sterilized. Do you happen to have any alcohol? I didn't see a wound. Look closer. In the meantime, I'll search for the booze.
This wing's got about a quarter to a half an inch on it all the way.
Consequently,
Hold on.
they did a lot
There's
more
something
harm
off
to their
about this.
aircraft.
Are you guys putting us
Investigators
on?
believe the ice in the wings degraded the plane's performance only slightly.
Rachel!
When combined with low engine power, though, it was enough to rob the pilots of the lift they needed to climb. The only remaining question, why was the crew willing to take such a dangerous risk?
A must in your medicine cabinet. Less sick days. Cold coming up? Zycam is the #1 cold shortening brand.
Highly recommended. Maybe your acting could use a little work. At least you committed to the performance. Thanks.
Thanks.
I could use a drink after trying to keep up with
Sunday
you.
starting at 1, and don't miss an all-new season of Air Disasters, premiering next Sunday at 8 on Smithsonian Channel.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
the ice.
Guess we're leaving now.
Tell you what.
And all the ramifications of the existing environmental conditions. They were literally unqualified.
The pilot's poor judgment and inexperience proved to be a deadly combination when they confronted the vicious snowstorm in Washington.
The captain knew things were wrong. He didn't want to stay there in Washington. He wanted to get out of town.
B1?
The NTSB's John McAdill has uncovered the precise sequence of errors that led to the fatal crash.
Your throttles? Okay.
Pettit begins pushing the thrust levers forward, aiming for the target of 2.04 EPR. Because the EPR sensors are blocked with ice, the gauge shoots up quickly and gives the crew a false reading. The Air Florida pilots are unaccustomed to winter flight.
Really cold here. Real cold.
And attribute the unusual engine behavior to the cold.
We hear the co-pilot articulating concern.
Gotta look at that thing. That don't seem right. Does it?
And yet it's not acted upon by the captain.
Yes, it is. There's 8.
The captain should probably have said, hey, wait a minute, let's abort this takeoff and let's figure out what's wrong with these engines.
B1?
Seconds after liftoff, the stick shiver activates, warning the pilots that they're losing lift and beginning to stall. The first officer tries to regain
Acting kind of standoffish ever since we left the park.
but with ice on his wings, it's impossible to recover.
If they had applied power about 10 seconds earlier, they could have flown to them.
We're going down, Larry. I know it.
I've heard that actor's moody, but wow, Rachel, I'm not
The accident
moody.
occurred because of
I just need some
accumulation of
space.
numerous
Is that all right with
decisions
you?
that were made by
Okay.
this particular flight crew.
It
Actually,
became apparent
no.
that whoever was
I
flying
thought
that
we were
airplane
having a
wasn't
great
doing
day
it properly.
together.
And I knew
Why are
that
you
halfway
acting
down
like
that
this all of a
runway.
sudden? I'm not acting
And I thought, what a
like
shame.
anything. I just
Because
want
we're
to be
all
left
going to get
alone
killed.
right now.
And most of us did.
On January
No.
13th,
I
1982,
don't understand.
a
You can't
series
just
of
turn on
errors
me
by
for
the
no
pilots
reason.
of Air Florida Flight 90
I'm sorry.
left
Turn on
78
me?
dead,
I
5
guess I forgot.
survivors.
It's always about how you feel, isn't it? Sad for all these fucking sad guys. Maybe you should try giving a shit about other people for once. Are you serious right now?
For his brave rescue of Priscilla
Okay. I still have no idea what's going on with Rachel, but apparently she gets smashy when she's angry. I can live
Icing
with
has
that.
been with us since Lindbergh, who iced up as he went across the Atlantic. And it will continue to be with us as we proceed in the future.
After 9/11,
Get out of it. Get out of it.
a passenger jet
The house started vibrating.
Here. You
slams
really want to smash something? That should be the trick.
The whole street was covered in flames.
265 people are dead.
What the hell happened? I will never forget this. It looked just like September 11th.
We asked for air cover. New York City has that.
Many fear the crash
I
is
have
an
to
accident.
Everybody thought it was a terrorist attack.
This was probably the most
I
complex
know you're the
release that I
school
ever
princess and all, with the DNA data and the perfect grades and all the perfect little Victorian faces. kissing your perfect ass, but seriously, fuck you. Great. I'm leaving. See you around. Watch me. Rachel, wait. Don't go. Why not? Because I don't want to ruin this the way I ruined everything else in my
It's the
life.
Veterans Day holiday in the United States, a day off for many.
And what is this exactly?
But at New York's John F. Kennedy Airport, it's another busy day.
I mean, are you actually going to make me say it? Say what?
American
Exactly.
Airlines Flight 587 is carrying 251 passengers en route to the Caribbean.
I always pack too much.
The crew is preparing the plane for takeoff. November 12th, 2001. It's the Veterans Day holiday in the United States, a day off for many. But at New York's John F. Kennedy Airport, it's another busy day. American Airlines Flight 587 is carrying 251 passengers en route to the Caribbean.
I always pack too much.
The crew is preparing the plane for takeoff.
Your leg, you check the rudders.
Rudders check.
Okay.
Taxi checklist is complete.
Captain Ed States is a former military pilot who joined American Airlines 16 years ago.
Leads on. Temperature check. I'm just going to double check the notes here.
First Officer Stan Molan will be the pilot
I know.
flying today.
101.1.
Today was the best day I've had since
He and the captain had flown together quite a
Dad
bit
died.
before and liked
And
flying
when I
together.
almost ruined it
So in
just
that
now,
aspect, this was a
the way I ruined everything, it made me realize whatever's going on between us.
American 587, follow Japan Air, Boeing 747 ahead.
Come on, say something. Oh, you know what?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm
Forget it.
number 2 for takeoff.
This was really stupid.
We'll be in a left-hand
You're Rachel Lambert.
In 2 or 3 minutes, it'll be our turn to go.
It's not that
587's flight plan takes it out over New York's Jamaica Bay before heading south to the Dominican Republic.
talk about it. Why not?
Everyone on board is
Because
looking
I
forward
can't.
to swapping the bleak November
I
weather
know it
for the
isn't
heat of the
fair.
Caribbean.
But it's how it is.
One passenger has even more reason to be thankful. 2 months ago, on September 11th, Hilda Mayor survived the attack on New York's World Trade Center.
Goodbye.
She was working on the ground floor when terrorists flew 2 airliners into the Twin Towers, killing more than 2,500 people.
9/11 was was the biggest terrorism event that had occurred in U.S. territory.
September 11th was a day that I don't think anybody who lives in New York will ever forget. It was a day that changed not only the city, but the whole world. I think everybody was in a total state of shock. And I think that shock lasted for months and months and months. American 587, Kennedy Tower. Caution, wake turbulence, runway 31 left. Taxi into position and hold.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please. You have the airplane. The captain indicated the first officer would be the flying pilot on this leg. The captain designated him to fly the flight. That's routine. It's the captain's choice.
American 587, runway 31 left, cleared for takeoff.
The first officer asks about their distance behind the plane that just took off.
You happy with that distance?
We'll be all right once we get rolling. It's supposed to be 5 miles by the time we're airborne. That's the idea.
So you're happy. Lights.
Yeah, lights are on.
Takeoff checks complete.
on the roll. They performed the takeoff. It's all done professionally. It's all done by standard procedures. V1.
Flight 587 lifts off at 9:14 a.m.
American 587 Heavy, climb and maintain 13,000.
In the homes below, residents of Queens, New York hear the familiar sound of jets overhead.
You know, she's
planes, take off and land. They fly right over the peninsula every 45 seconds. It was just a normal thing.
Fuck off.
The patch of turbulence rocks the plane.
You alright? Yeah, I'm fine.
Hang on.
I've never understood your part on it. A million pictures of us. Now, one of them shows that you were believed when I knew you
Above the ground, disaster strikes.
Fuck.
The plane is losing altitude and falling out of the sky.
Holy crap.
The tail just fell off. Holy shit.
1,000 pounds of flammable jet fuel on board.
What the hell are we into?
And the plane is heading straight for the houses of Queens, New York.
Sound at first was just a normal airplane flying above. I was still in bed, kind of half sleeping, half awake. As it started to get louder, that's when you felt a little vibration.
Tower, look to the south. There's an aircraft crash.
Airplane going down. Get out of it! Get out of it! Get out of it! The house started vibrating very heavily. It's all happened really quick.
Whatever. What else happened?
Airplane going down. Get out of it! Get out of it! Get out of it!
Oh, the engine fell off too. Holy shit.
Really quick.
It ignites a massive fireball, engulfing several homes.
So a woman gets out of 9/11
Plane crashed.
and just dies after
The
that.
street exploded. My whole window was bright orange, really loud, really bright. I just jumped up looking for my glasses, and pretty much with my dad ran out to the front of the house.
Are you missing any flights? American Airlines Flight 587.
We ran out the front door. All I could see, because I didn't have my glasses, I couldn't find my glasses. The whole street was covered in flames. My whole side of my house was covered in flames, and there was just black smoke billowing up like really high.
What the hell happened?
I remember looking back into my house, and the whole kitchen area was just black. It was all thick black smoke already.
Fire rips through the quiet neighborhood, and a city still in shock from the events of 9/11 is plunged back into fear and chaos.
It looks like a war zone.
Jason's mother, Lois, is driving to work when she gets the most terrifying call of her life.
My husband is screaming hysterically into the phone, "The house is burning down, the house is burning down, come home." And in those moments, I went into a state of panic, thinking I didn't know where Jason was. I drove towards Rockaway, and I will never forget this. It looked just like September 11th. All I saw was the black smoke and the flames for like what looked like a mile. The whole area looked like it was on fire. Then I realized that my house was like gone. And I was just in I was in total shock.
We're over here!
I heard Mark and Jason scream, "We're over here." And I turned around and I saw them, and I ran over and I almost fainted. Then I remember screaming to them, "What happened?" And they're telling me a plane crash.
The horrific scene seems to echo the events of September 11th. All too 60 people, as well as 5 people on the ground.
Everybody thought it was a terrorist attack.
Many people fear the worst.
As a struggling actor, I need all the breaks that I can.
Dad.
Giuliani tries to reassure the public.
Just talked to President Bush, we talked to his chief of staff. We asked for air cover. New York City has that. The airports have been closed for a while. And I talked to the governor, and just as a precaution, we're going to close the bridges and tunnels for an hour or two.
I thought it was a terrorist attack because I couldn't imagine a plane just falling out of the sky. Why would anybody want to crash a plane? It's a rock away.
For the second time in 2 months, New York airports are closed. All flights are grounded, stranding thousands of terrified passengers. Fearing the crash is another act of terrorism, the FBI immediately sends a team of agents to investigate.
Send anyone who saw what happened over to me, okay?
Barry Maughan is the assistant director of the FBI's field office in New York City. 8 weeks earlier, he was at the scene when the World Trade Center collapsed. He pulled his team out just before the Twin Towers came down.
We are still heavily involved in the investigation of 9/11. So when I heard about it, I immediately got concerned as to was this another terrorist attack.
But the FBI isn't working alone. This is first and foremost a plane crash.
This investigation is being led by the National Transportation Safety Board to make sure that the facts are fully known to the American people.
The NTSB sends its own team of experts to Queens. They face a daunting challenge. A passenger plane and 4 houses demolished. The 2 agencies are searching for clues that are going to be very hard to find.
This was probably the most complex investigation that I had ever directed.
Robert Benson is a 17-year veteran of the NTSB. He's investigated 30 major accidents. He's in charge of a team of 21 investigators.
I'd like to think we enter any investigation with an open mind, but we're all human beings, and this accident occurred so close to the tragedy of 9/11 that we naturally jump to conclusions. Then we had to force ourselves to back up and carefully study the evidence. Make sure it's all in one place. Murphy.
Because you're not real.
Agent Maughan, FBI.
Investigator Brian Murphy is the NTSB structures and materials expert.
What is going on?
He's a veteran of many crashes, but this one hits close to home. He has close ties to this neighborhood.
Hadn't given it much thought until I had seen the church where we'd buried both of my grandfather and my grandmother, St. Dennis, right there. So, and then I came back, and when I walked over to 129th Street, I remember, being a kid, my cousins and I were all there.
What
This
bright
neighborhood,
side?
though far removed from Lower Manhattan, has a deep connection to the 9/11 attacks.
There are a lot of firemen and policemen who live in this community, and a lot of the firemen did respond September 11th, and a lot of the firemen were killed.
It came in fast and steep. Let's hope it's not what we think.
The NTSB and the FBI will work the crash site together until one important question is answered. Was this terrorism or was it an accident?
Airplane parts going to bins. Everything else stays here for now.
The crash site is a chaotic mixture of household debris and plane wreckage. Sorting one from the other is a difficult task.
Sorting between home and airplane has to be done. I don't want to take all of the 5 homes home with me to sort through. You want to try and do as best as you can while you're on site to make sure you isolate airplane, and you also don't want to leave any airplane behind.
Definitely not from our plane.
We've been doing this a long time, of course, and we can recognize an airplane by only looking at it. But to the layperson, the description
construction of the fuselage and the wings was so great that I would venture to say even a layperson would have trouble recognizing it as an airplane crash.
Flight 587 crashed into a densely populated neighborhood. Hundreds of people saw the plane come down and are eager to tell their story.
I heard a noise. I looked up in the sky. I saw a plane. I saw fire coming out of it. It went off in half.
I was out of sleep. It's a sound that got me up. It was real loud.
Witness reports fuel concerns that this was a terrorist attack.
Some of the witnesses were saying they saw the plane explode in the air, that they saw a huge fireball, and it sounding like it had been a bomb on board.
If there was a bomb, there should be evidence of it in the debris.
Experts would be physically examining all of the parts of the plane to see if there was any indentations or outward movement of the plane indicating that the explosion was inside and pushed everything out.
Any chance this plane exploded from the inside out?
But they weren't finding any of that.
The twisted metal reveals no evidence of an explosion, but there are other signs to look for.
They would be looking for any explosive residue in any parts of the plane, which would usually tells us that this occurred because of an explosion.
Investigators take swabs from the debris and send them to be tested for explosive material.
We did a number of other things too. We went over to the airport and we talked to the baggage handlers. We talked to the airline personnel. You know, did they note anything suspicious pertaining to the passengers on this flight?
The two agencies could soon get the answers they need. Within a day of the crash, searchers find both the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder.
Hallelujah. Now let's see what secrets those boxes hold.
While investigators wait for the data to be downloaded, they continue examining the wreckage for clues. But not all of it is at the crash site in Queens.
We found a vertical stabilizer miles and miles away.
The vertical stabilizer has been found in Jamaica Bay, between the airport and the crash site. The location tells investigators it broke off while the plane was still in the air.
So that was a good first step for us.
The vertical stabilizer is part of the tail. Along with the horizontal stabilizer, it's critical for stable flight.
The horizontal stabilizer and the vertical stabilizer are almost like feathers on a dart. They keep the aircraft going in a straight direction.
You can't fly without a tail. You can. But if the airplane's going to go down, there's nothing you can do about it.
I don't know how to talk about it.
Get that tail to the hangar so we can get a good close look.
Deceased aircrash investigators. The discovery hints that terrorism did not cause the crash.
The fact that we saw early on the vertical stabilizer separated from the wreckage by many miles led us to an initial hope that it wasn't a terrorist act, because it would be very difficult for a terrorist to manage to blow the vertical stabilizer off of an aircraft.
NTSB investigators are under pressure to find answers. If this wasn't an act of terrorism, there could be a flaw with the A300, one of the world's most popular planes. It's a frightening prospect.
That caused us, in our minds, to accelerate the pace of the investigation a bit because the aircraft was not grounded.
I felt like my dad
We
was
had
lying
reason
about
to do the
something.
investigation thoroughly but quickly.
Let me see rudder, airspeed, and
I didn't know what it was. So when I saw
Investigators
he
pin their hopes on the
got
flight data recorder.
asking him to meet me, I thought I could catch him or something.
They immediately notice something unusual.
What are these rudder inputs?
The rudder helps pilots turn the plane by deflecting the oncoming air. The more it pivots, the more air is deflected, and the sharper the turn.
I love him. And I never want to see his fucking face again.
In flight data recorder, we discovered that the rudder had been moved back and forth rapidly
several times. Didn't align. Could have been caused by pilots, one or both perhaps, reacting to something. We had to keep an open mind.
Half the time I got him out.
Investigators are intrigued. It looks like the pilots were having trouble controlling the plane during the last 30 seconds of the flight.
Forgot that anything had changed.
A few seconds later, the plane pitches down suddenly and accelerates.
It's silly.
The dramatic motion can only mean one thing. This is the moment the tail hit the plane.
My dad took me from me when I was 10. It started raining.
And then 7 seconds later, the stabilizer snaps off.
I remember screaming like I was going to die. My dad?
A young man, a student like me, last name King before he was one or knew he'd become one. The more conscious, ubiquitous, seeing, sitting in class reading books while following exploding, causes of hate boil. Little did he know that soon he'd be called. He knelt before Kaepernick took a knee, turned one cheek, then the other, illuminated shame. Now here I am in the so-called land of the free, home of the brave, still fighting, because freedom ain't free. Freedom ain't free. We are the flame, the candle in the dark. Here I am, here we are.
Hey, we were both kind of the queen of shitty. No, I mean it. Whatever's going on between us, it's intense and new and awesome, and you had the courage to tell me that you feel it too.
Hope the plane's cockpit voice recorder will tell them why the pilots were having so much trouble controlling their plane.
Ready to go?
And why the plane's tail came off in midair.
Maybe a slight buzz from
CPR
that
is an
line.
amazing device. It's a digital tape recorder that records all noises in the cockpit and noises even some outside the cockpit.
They listen to the last few moments of the flight. If a bomb brought down the plane, they should hear the sound of the explosion.
You didn't give a shit. I saw you sneak through the side.
Yeah.
You saw that?
Investigators listen as the pilots discuss healing the wake from another plane. It seems Molan wants more speed to help them fly through it.
250 knots, thank you. Max power. You alright? Yeah, I'm fine. Hang on to it.
The investigators listen for the sound of an explosion.
We heard loud pops and snaps, and especially loud noise.
1558. That's the tail turning off.
They matched the timing of that sound to the FDR data.
And we could pinpoint exactly the second when the vertical stabilizer came off.
Holy crap! You got right in his face and called him out. That was pretty sweet.
Get out of it! Get out of it!
See?
Onboard explosions also have a distinct sound pulse.
I don't anyone. Plus, you came along with me, no questions asked.
There's nothing on the recording to indicate the bomb exploded on the plane.
I guess tomorrow there'll be help. My mom might skip ground
the lab results confirm there's no trace of explosives on any of the debris.
No signs of an incendiary device being on board. No claims of credit. No suspicious activity either at the airport or even with the passengers themselves.
Nothing on the flight recorder. No explosion.
This was in all likelihood either a mechanical error or a pilot error.
I'm not surprised. It seems consistent with what we're finding.
I'm serious.
Once determination is made that it's not a criminal matter,
Wrap it up, guys.
Okay.
We're done here.
then we totally go away, actually.
The FBI leaves the investigation in the hands of the NTSB.
Once we could eliminate a terrorist act, then the
investigation took on a different focus. We were sure now it was an aircraft accident.
All right. Back to the wreckage. Let's figure this thing out.
Thank you.
Investigators are faced with a puzzling question. How does the vertical stabilizer just fall off?
I've been investigator in charge of the NTSB for, at that time, 20 years or so, and I'd never seen anything quite like this.
Investigators study the vertical stabilizer recovered from Jamaica Bay. They look for any clues that might explain why it broke off.
Here's a case where the vertical stabilizer failed during a routine flight. And to some point, understand what are the factors involved.
And they can take a closer look at the edge that broke away from the rest of the plane. They make a surprise.
We'll be playing episode 2 maybe after dinner. Definitely the updates have made the game a lot better. I definitely see the graphics now. Wow. I mean, I think that the graphics are a lot, the updates did good on this game. The Xbox version still has freaking issues. I don't think they got any updates for the game. Wow. So that's where we'll be. Next time we play, we'll be doing episode 2. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it, and we will be back maybe after dinner to play after dinner. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.
Just ripped apart. The vertical stabilizer is attached to the plane mainly by 3 pairs of fittings. For some reason, they all failed. It's a confounding discovery. The stabilizer is made of a modern composite material that's designed to be stronger than steel. Perhaps its strength is...
All right, let's go. Come on.
was actually the first accident that we had investigated where a large composite component had failed. So that became a question in our minds.
Composites are made by fusing more than 100 layers of carbon and glass fiber.
I rest my case. The game is still fucked up. I don't understand this. Why the hell is this taking so long to fucking load? Go back to the main menu.
Somewhere. Industry manufacturers plan to increase the use of composite materials for new aircraft.
I'll see you later, people. Thank you.
But if composite